Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
This episode is sponsored by Comrade Socks. For years, I've known about the health benefits of wearing compression socks, especially when I travel or have to sit for extended periods of time. You know, things like reduced risk of blood clots, improved athletic performance, reduced soreness and swelling, and much, much more. The problem? Most compression socks are hideous, expensive, and uncomfortable. That's why I replaced mine with Comrade Socks. Comrade Socks are engineered for all-day comfort and support, plus they come in neat colors and patterns that you'll actually be proud to wear. To get your very own pair of Comrade Socks and get 20% off your first order, visit comradesocks.com/superhuman or use discount code superhuman at checkout. That's comradesocks.com/superhuman. Greetings, Super Friends, and welcome to this week's episode, which is lovingly crafted thanks to a wonderful review from Rogin Rosario Surea from Canada, who says, 5 stars, thanks for helping me grow new brain cells. Absolutely love this podcast. Jonathan has a cadence that really fits my sound preferences. His vocabulary is clearly accessed with great ease and a precise ability to articulate the intangible without being overly verbose. Every single episode I've listened to has offered me value and or insights on some level or another. I really feel that he genuinely wants his listener to benefit from the podcast. The content is substantial and basically I'm hooked. Rogin goes on to share a bunch of really great suggestions that I am going to look into. And thank you, Rogin. And if you haven't left a review, please go ahead and do so. Just look how excited it makes me. On to today's episode. Guys and gals, today we are joined by Jacques Hopkins. Jacques worked as an engineer for 8 years before quitting his job and turning his biggest hobby into a highly successful online piano course. Today, he supports his family with the passive income from that course while teaching others to do the same. I wanted to talk to Jacques because I also had a side passion and have a side passion of learning an instrument and learning multiple instruments. Most recently, I have learned piano, and I wanted to talk to Jacques about the importance of learning an instrument, but also as someone who transitioned and brought music into his life, I wanted him to share his insights with all of you as to why anyone and everyone can and should pick up a musical instrument. The conversation varied from how you can accelerate your learning of a specific instrument, the piano, to why music is important, why people should learn music, and how you don't have to be a musical person to learn a musical instrument. We also talk about the massive misconceptions and the ways that most people go about learning music being troublesome. I enjoyed the episode. It's a short and sweet one, and I know you will as well. So please enjoy this conversation with Jacques Hopkins. Mr. Jacques Hopkins, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing mostly well. It's uncharacteristically cold here in South Louisiana. There's a reason I live down here, and I don't like the cold weather, so I'm bundled up here, but I'm ready to go.
Well, that's awesome. Bundled up is good podcast weather. If it were warm, you'd be wishing you were anywhere here but me, with me. But that is awesome. Jacques, I'm really excited to talk to you today for a couple different reasons. One, I so enjoyed being on your podcast. I have to say, it was refreshing. It was fun. We geeked out. You and I share the passion of teaching strangers on the internet, which is always fun. But also because I discovered along the way that we share another passion, and that is piano and learning music. So I'm really excited for our audience to figure out, because of your story, I think a lot of people might be inspired today to pick up a musical instrument.
Yeah, I got a lot of good feedback from that podcast, which has come out already. We geeked out on online courses, and I'm excited to geek out with you a little bit here on learning and music today.
Yeah, so I tried to cover your bio in the intro a little bit. I want to hear it from your perspective. How did you get here?
Oh, man. How long do we have? The piano story, that's one of the biggest reasons that somebody chooses to sign up to learn piano from me with my piano online course is because of my story. They really resonate with it. There's so many people that either just always they've always been scared about the piano, but there's something about it they've always wanted to learn how to play, or like me, they took piano lessons when they were a kid, and for one reason or another it didn't stick, and they always regretted that. They always regretted not actually learning and not continuing with it and knowing how to play today. So for me, my parents put me in piano lessons when I was little, when I was 5 years old. I took piano lessons for 12 years, and I was the worst student, never practiced. So it should be no surprise that I made very little progress. And the short version is that after 12 years of piano lessons, I literally only knew how to play 2 songs on the piano, and I didn't even like those 2 songs. So I found kind of a different way to play, one that involves more chords and improvisation over sheet music and memorization. And I really dove into that method and appreciated it for myself first, and eventually started sharing it with other people, and they also appreciate it too because they're able to play songs they like and learn quickly.
Very, very cool. Now, you were an engineer. What made you change your path? I mean, why go into teaching people piano on the internet?
I was able to quit my job as an engineer almost 4 years ago. And so if you would have told me, let's say 10 years ago, that you're going to be what you're going to do for a living, how you're going to support your family is by teaching people all over the world piano, I thought you were absolutely crazy. I never thought this would be like my actual job. Totally. Same. My whole life, I just was always going to be an engineer. Ever since, first grade math, my teacher was like, you're good at math. You should be an engineer. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is, but sounds great. And ever since then, I thought I was going to be an engineer, and I was. And so I was an engineer for 8 years, but I didn't hate my job, but I didn't love it either. It didn't excite me. Sundays, I wasn't excited about going to work the next morning. And so I was always looking for a way out. And I tried a few different businesses. I read 4 Hour Work Week like most people. That was senior year of college, of undergrad for me. And ever since reading that, I was trying to figure out something that I could do for myself. It was my own business. I loved the idea of an online business, outsourcing all that, being able to travel. And I tried a few different things. Nothing worked really well until what really happened was I was not doing a good job at trying to work on whatever side business it was. And I would procrastinate, and I would procrastinate with my piano. And I realized that if what I came to when I didn't want to do anything else, and what I would procrastinate with was the piano, I was like, what if there's a business here? And that's how it kind of got started. And it just worked out really well. And my message has resonated with people. It's worked. Really cool.
So your course, or the course that I know you from, is called Piano in 21 Days. Can we really learn a musical instrument, much less one as complicated as the piano, in 21 days?
There's a myth that it's complicated. One of the biggest things I need to do for people is demystify the piano, because at the end of the day, it's really not that complicated. I would argue it's one of the easiest, if not the easiest instrument to learn. Now, it's called Piano in 21 Days, but the majority of people don't actually learn it in 21 days, or at least 21 consecutive days. It's an online course. You're obviously very familiar with online courses. When people sign up, they get lifetime access. So whether that means they want to spread out the lessons or revisit lessons, I'm cool with that. There's people that signed up 6 years ago that still come back for refreshers. So most of the time, people just kind of pick a pace that works for them. If they want to spend 3 days on a lesson and spread it out that way, that's fine. But people have absolutely learned in 21 days. The record so far is 19 days.
Really cool. Now, Jacques, I imagine you've seen some incredible transformations in people who didn't think that they were musical, didn't think, that they'd be able to learn this. To folks out there in the audience thinking, I'm not a musical person, I have no musical talent, what would you say to them about the merits of learning a musical instrument, any musical instrument for that matter?
Well, the first thing I say is that I'm not musical either. And I'm very, very left brain, like engineer, like not artsy at all, not creative. And that's one of the reasons that those piano lessons didn't resonate and work well for me growing up. And so it's somewhat like an engineer's approach to piano is the way that I teach. And there's a lot of formulas and things to do. And so if you're not musical, then what better person to learn from than somebody who's an accomplished piano teacher who's also not musical.
And I imagine, I mean, how has your life and the lives of your students changed by kind of tapping into this? Because I could tell you all about the crazy stuff that happens in the human brain when we learn music, but I'm interested to hear from your perspective. I mean, how's your life changed as you've embraced music, and also how the lives of those you've touched changed? I mean, what's at stake here for people?
So I've said it multiple times. I hated piano lessons growing up. And so when I finally switched to a different way to play piano around 17 years old and then into college, for the first time in my life, I was actually enjoying sitting down at my piano and playing things. And it's because I was playing songs that I actually wanted to play, not songs that my teacher assigned to me. And, I was kind of making them my own. I wasn't just repeating back something that was on sheet music. It wasn't something just memorized. I knew how to just kind of make music for myself. And that was brand new. And it's hard to put into words what that feeling is like to like create something musical. I didn't know that was even going to be possible. So for me, that was a huge shift, a huge change, and it actually made it so I could enjoy piano and music for the first time. And then once I started sharing it with other people, they had similar responses. I have a Facebook group for my students, and one of the best things that's happening in there is people will show their progress, and they'll say, I wasn't musical. I didn't think I'd ever be able to do this, but watch this. Like, I can actually play a song on the piano, and you can see they're like smiling the whole time. And I had one girl or lady recently post how she was kind of in depression, like her father passed away. She didn't know where she was going to go, and like the piano just healed everything for her.
Wow, definitely. I have also found. We all know that music is very therapeutic, and we all know that we can listen to music to get ourselves into a different state of mind. But creating it is even more intense, right? Or recreating it, I would say. I'm not composing my own music by any sense, but after a really, really hard day, picking up a guitar and just kind of expressing yourself when you don't have words for what you've experienced, there's something magical about it, for sure.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like creating in terms of writing your own song, but even if you're playing somebody else's song, being able to like improvise and do your own things within that song is pretty powerful, even if you're not like writing your own songs.
Yeah, not to mention, like I mentioned before, the massive benefits for the brain. I mean, music is one of the most challenging things, especially when you're playing it. It's one of the most challenging activities for the human brain, and it's like a full brain workout. You have motor skills, you have rhythm, you have melody, you have vocabulary. It's just everything happening all at once. And I was actually on a podcast earlier today talking about this, how I would not be surprised. I've seen some studies associating language learning late in age with staving off Alzheimer's and dementia. And I would not be surprised to see studies come out that music is as effective or more effective for maintaining overall brain health into later age. Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
I wouldn't be surprised either, and I'm going to write that down because that'd be a good thing to look into. And if there is research like that, I mean, that's my audience definitely skews older because it's people that just always wanted to learn. And so if that can just be another reason to learn piano or any instrument, all the better for people. I mean, that's if I'm getting up in age and there's studies that show me if I can do something to alleviate some of those things, I'm definitely going to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. Now, Jacques, tell me a bit about your process. I mean, you teach in a very different way, and I'd love if you could give us kind of an overview of what does it look like to learn piano in 21 days?
Well, the traditional way is through sheet music, and it works for a lot of people. The biggest problem I have with sheet music is it's a piece of paper, and on that paper, it's just a way to tell you what note to play and when to play it, and in this order. And that's fine, and that's how you can recreate some of these magical songs that people have written throughout the years. But you're not, a lot of people don't truly learn music that way. They just learn to parrot something back. So the way that I teach people is based on chords and improvisation. And one of the early tricks that I teach people in this process, and it's one of the main reasons that people start to trust me as a piano teacher, and you'll see this in almost every video I've got on YouTube, is this trick for learning chords on the piano. And what a chord is just multiple notes played at the same time. And really any modern song, the foundation of them is chords. And I teach chords in a non-music teacher type of way. And what I say is you just need to memorize these two simple formulas. For major chords, you need to remember 4-3. And for minor chords, you need to remember 3-4. So what that looks like is if you want to play, for example, a C major chord, find the C key on the piano or keyboard, which is any white key just to the left of any two black keys, and then go to the right, the very next 4 keys. Doesn't matter if they're black and white, they're all the same when it comes down to it. And when you go to the right 4 keys, you end up on an E. And when you go to the right another 3 keys, you end up on a G. So our C major chord is C, E, G. You don't need to memorize all the major chords, all the minor chords. You just use those simple formulas, and you instantly know all the major and minor chords. The minor chord formula is just 3-4. So that's a big light bulb going off for people. They're like, wow, like I thought I had to memorize them, or I thought I had to use the scale and then figure out this part of the scale and that part of the scale.
Right.
And I kind of broke it down. I was like, why isn't anybody else teaching chords like this? And almost every day I get an email like, oh my gosh, the 3-4-4-3 thing just blows me away. It's unbelievable. So people start off there, and then from there, you can find the chords to the songs that you want to play. I know you play a little bit of guitar. I'm sure you're familiar with looking up guitar chords on the internet. It's way more mainstream to play chords on a guitar than it is piano, but that's how I teach for piano is let's look up those guitar chords and use those chords on the piano. And then from there, it's really just about using fill-in techniques that I teach throughout the rest of the course to make it then sound like a full and complete song. So that's my whole process right there. That is piano in 21 days, and hopefully you can see that's a lot easier. That's a way more of like an 80-20 approach to learning piano than years of lessons and sheet music.
Well, and what I like about it as the learning guy is that you just get people doing right away. And what I hated about traditional piano lessons is like I didn't come here to pick up a book and read music, and music is hard enough to read as it is, right? It's one of these like really tricky things that you kind of just have to get over. But from the time where you sign up for the lessons to the time where you're actually playing something is so long that people lose motivation, right? Learners need quick wins. And if you don't get those, it's so easy to just be like, piano's not for me or guitar's not for me. When really it's sitting around reading sheet music is not for you. And I don't think anyone enjoys sitting around reading sheet music. It's just a necessary evil. So why not push that out of the way as far as you can?
Yeah, at the end of the day, knowing how to play the piano is knowing how to play songs on the piano. So I want to get people to be playing actual songs as quickly as possible. That's why we're playing our first song on day 5. Whereas, I had a student recently who had signed up for traditional piano lessons. He had been doing that for 6 months, and then he started taking my course. He told me in those 6 months of piano lessons, he was a beginner. He hadn't done anything before that. He hadn't even gotten to a song yet. And with my course on day 5, he was already playing a song, and he was just blown away.
Really, really cool. And how many people, if you don't mind sharing, how many people have gone through this program?
Just crossed over 3,500 students. Wow. And it's brought in, I'm not to your level yet, Jonathan, but it's brought in $1.2 million, which is pretty awesome.
Incredible, considering this was supposed to be, you never figured that you would be teaching piano on the internet.
Yep.
Really cool. What do you think is next for you in terms of your learning, but also in terms of what you want to teach?
Well, that's a good question. I have no plans of ever stopping piano in 21 days. Like I'm by far the world's best piano player or anything like that. And it's not necessarily my biggest passion or anything, but I love sharing that information and helping people who didn't think they would ever be able to learn piano. So that's always going to be there. And it brings in, enough to support me and my family. We live a very good life. So I spend most of my time now teaching about online courses.
Really cool.
Most of that content and training and everything that I offer is just free out there. I have a podcast on it. I have a course. Like that's all free. I get a little bit of affiliate income from that, but most of all, I just really enjoy that. And to be honest with you, I'm learning French right now. Like I like learning.
Cool.
I always like having something that I'm learning. And we've taken several trips to France with the family. And every time I go, I feel like I haven't really gotten any better since the last time. We even stayed there for 3 months one time. And so I'm taking a class at the university. I'm like all in on learning French right now.
All right, let's take a quick pause here to thank this episode's sponsor, Caldera Lab, makers of The Good. The Good is an easy-to-use, all-natural skincare serum for men made entirely from plants. I've been putting it on every morning for a couple of weeks now, and I have to say that my skin already looks and feels tighter and smoother. Plus, I love the smell and the way my skin feels all day when I use it. To try out Caldera Labs The Good and get 20% off your first order, visit calderalab.com/superhuman or use discount code superhuman at checkout. That's calderalab.com/superhuman. All right, let's get back to the episode. Really, really cool. Yeah, I was going to ask you a bit about how you learn, because you and I clearly geek out about how people can learn expressly challenging things. Do you mess around? Have you ever messed around with mnemonics or memory palaces or any of that kind of stuff?
Not especially, man. When I go to learn something, I'm all about shortcuts though, and I want to learn from somebody who clearly knows what they're doing, and obviously if it's a shortcut, I want it to be an effective shortcut. And when somebody's promoting teaching me something, like if they mention the 80-20 principle, like I'm all in. Like if they say their approach uses that, I'm in. That's the big thing for me.
Love that. I love that. Jacques, share with me some other skills, habits, or routines, since you and I both love shortcuts. What are some other things that you're doing to help you perform at a higher level?
So for me, I'm a believer in the whole getting things done methodology. David Allen made that famous a long time ago. I read that book back when I was an engineer, and the two biggest things from that book. I mean, there's a lot of things in that book, that process, but for me, I've got to write everything down. Like I constantly getting ideas, or something as simple as picking up something from the store. I make sure I always have like something to write with, or be able to take a note in my phone. Because if I don't write something down, like if it's important enough that I want to come back to it later, if I don't write it down, I know I'm not gonna remember it. And then the other part of that methodology that is very important to me in my process, my routine, is the weekly review. So I've got all of my stuff, all my projects and tasks and things I'm waiting for from other people, everything in one system, and that's great. But if I'm not hitting that everything in that system at least weekly, to just kind of go over and see, take a high level view of where I'm at with everything, then that's not good. So I make sure to do that at least weekly.
Really cool. That's a smart habit. What are some products or services you couldn't live without?
I love tools. I think we talked about that on my podcast. Yes. You like tools too, man. And I know you recommended some to me that I'm starting to use. I think I mentioned some you weren't familiar with either, but one of my absolute favorites, and I think you might be using this too, is Bonjoro.
Yes.
I absolutely love Bonjoro. It's a tool. It's very inexpensive. It allows you to quickly and easily send a short video to an email address.
Right.
And the reason I started using Bonjoro is because two and a half years ago, when I was starting my podcast, I signed up for a podcast course by a person who a lot of people are probably familiar with, Pat Flynn, pretty big timer. And when I signed up for his course, I received one of these Bonjoros from him. And he called me out by name. He's like, "Hey, Jacques, so excited to have you in the course, excited to work with you." I was just blown away that he would take the time to do that. I mean, he was having hundreds of people, join in on this initial launch, and he did that. And I remember how I felt getting that from him. And so I immediately signed up for Bonjoro. I'm like, if Pat Flynn can take the time to do this for his students, there's no reason I can't do this for my piano students. So ever since then, I've been sending out Bonjoros every time somebody signs up for my piano course. And if I can make my students feel a tenth of the way that I felt when I got one, then I'm all in. And the feedback that I've gotten from my students is awesome. And because a lot of what we do as online business owners and marketers is automated. And so there's funnels, I have this evergreen funnel going to try to get people to sign up. So if I can break through that in a couple of places throughout the funnel, that's great. And Bonjoro is an awesome tool to allow me to do that.
Bingo. Yeah, we started doing the same thing. I have to admit, I'm like way behind on them right now because we did a couple webinars and I cannot keep up. So I've delegated out a lot of it to my team, but I need to get better about it. And I love Bonjoro. I send out a ton of them. Ton of them. So really, really cool. Any other tools? Because as you said, we both geek out on tools. We could probably do a whole podcast just on that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, ClickFunnels, I rely on ClickFunnels heavily. That's where my course is hosted, but I also use it for my order forms and landing pages and funnels. There's other solutions out there that are probably just as good, but I like having so many things in one place. I like Deadline Funnel a lot for evergreen funnels. ActiveCampaign is my favorite email autoresponder. And here's one more that I just really, really like, Pick Snippets. What that allows me to do is when somebody joins my email list, and when people join my email list, they're joining to get this free workbook. It's called Learn 36 Popular Songs in 5 Days. And so I email them a copy of that workbook, but inside that initial email is a picture of me holding up this sign that says, "Welcome, John," or whatever their name is. Pick Snippets allows me to put their name on that sign. And it's just another kind of personal touch I'm able to throw into that whole funnel.
That's a really great tool. That's awesome. I'm writing that down for myself here. Pick Snippets. Brilliant. So a few more rapid fire questions here. What are a few books that have changed your life?
So I mentioned 4 Hour Work Week. I mean, my life took a totally different path since reading that. I'm sure almost everybody getting into online business has read that at some point. It's crazy to think that's like a 12 or 13-year-old book now. So beyond that, Expert Secrets is one of the top books that I recommend to people like in online courses, because that's by Russell Brunson, the creator of ClickFunnels. That book is one of the best books that I've come across on how to be successful with online courses. And then another one that I'm a big fan of is Profit First. You familiar with Profit First?
I am. I read half of it and I was like, I don't know if I can implement this, but tell me why you like it.
It's, I was an engineer, I didn't know anything about marketing when I started my business. And so I had to learn everything about marketing, and I didn't know anything about accounting. I just assumed you've got all this money coming in from the people buying your course, and then you've got expenses, you pay for the tools and the contractors and the advertising and everything. And then whatever's left, that's for you. Well, I guess you have taxes. And then I don't know. I just assumed it was that straightforward. But Profit First is a system of accounting for small businesses, and it really makes it so you can maximize the profit. You get to keep the most of it. You don't go into debt. It's just a really, really smart system, a smart way to run your business. And my business completely transformed in terms of being profitable once I implemented that system.
Awesome. All right, maybe I need to finish the book. Really, really good. Now, one thing I do want to ask, homework. We love to assign homework on this show. What's something that people can do while they wait for next week's episode, whether that's maybe downloading this resource you mentioned, or an exercise that they could do, or going down to the store and touching a piano and seeing if it moves them emotionally? What should people do this week?
Yeah, so like you alluded to earlier, quick wins are really important, right? So if somebody's out there and they're like, I don't know if this piano thing can work for me, 21 days sounds like a scam. Well, here's what you can do and see if it is going to work for you. Use the 4-3-3-4 trick that I was talking about earlier. Like, you can literally build every major and minor chord on the piano, just remembering those simple formulas: 4-3 for major chords, 3-4 for minor chords. If you have a keyboard or piano around, play with it. Go somewhere, go to a friend's house who has one, play with that. Okay, and then it's like, okay, Jacques, I know the major and minor chords now. And then Google a song that you want to know how to play. If you want to play All of Me by John Legend, go to Google, type in all of me, John Legend, chords, and there's going to be hundreds of results. Just click on the first one, and they will literally show you what chords are used to play that song. And then use your formulas, play the songs, and you are, in the matter of an hour, playing a basic version of that song. And I mean, it's an actual song. Like, how great is that?
So cool. Yeah, that quick win is massive. And that's what got me sucked in, is when I was like, wait a minute, okay, I don't need to be able to read the music to actually play and understand as well. I don't know how much you dabble in music theory and stuff, but actually to understand why songs are written in the way that they're written, and to be able to appreciate music. Like there's an Israeli artist that I really, really love, and I've always loved his music. Idan Reichel is his name. And I've always loved his music, and then once I started understanding more about music theory, and music became this more approachable thing that I, didn't admire from a distance, but admired as someone who knew what was happening. I was like, Jesus, like from a music theory perspective, what he's done is so incredible, and it has so much symmetry and beauty and perfection in the actual way that he's written the music. And you see it the first time you try and play some of his stuff on the keyboard. It's exactly the way it should be, which was a special experience for me.
That's cool. I think the why we're doing things is incredibly important to the learning process, and that's why, if you're playing a C major chord, I want you to know that the formula for how we got there, instead of just memorizing C, E, G. But at the same time, like, I want to walk the line of not sharing too much of the the deep theory, the deep music theory, and get people overwhelmed that maybe it's not for them either.
Sure. Naturally. So that's some really, really solid homework. Jacques, where can people check you out and learn more about all the stuff that you're doing and putting out?
2 places, man. pianoin21days.com and theonlinecourseguy.com.
Beautiful. And we will link those up in the show notes. Jacques Hopkins, it's been an absolute pleasure, as always, chatting with you. I want to thank you, and I do hope we keep in touch.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
One last question. I almost forgot. We end every episode with this one. If people take away just one message and they carry it with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
I think that message is that you don't have to be world class in something or an expert in something to be able to teach it to somebody else or have a positive impact on somebody else's life in that topic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have not won any memory games championships, but I certainly have taught many hundreds of thousands of people how to use the techniques. So I completely agree. Jacques, always a pleasure, my friend. Keep in touch.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.